Morning, everyone. I see it's 10 o'clock, so let's start, not to waste anyone's time. As people dial in, they can just continue. Welcome to everyone. It's the first time we actually also have representative of the media on here. So it's some unbeknown people to us, some old shareholders, some no management on today except for the three of us. I'll introduce now. Bondholders, stakeholders, and then, as I said earlier, some members of the media. Welcome to the pre-close presentation, which will be more of a discussion format for Feb 2024. I thank you for your time, and I also thank you for your interest in the company. Just to be clear, no market-sensitive information will be disclosed. It's a general update on both our businesses and how we see the road ahead. And also, when we get later to questioning, we will refrain from commenting or answering market-sensitive questions. To maybe keep it a bit interactive, we've decided towards the end, you can still post your question in the chat box or the comments box, but we will also, if you raise your hand through to the end, we'll unmute you, and then you can actually ask your question. And it's just more interactive than just me speaking or the management team speaking to all of you for a full hour. The format will be quite quick. I'll do a 10 to 15-minute update on the businesses, and then we'll open the floor for questions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wikus Lategan. I represent Calgro. Across me, the more beautiful side of me is Sayuri Naika, our Financial Director, and behind us, Waldo Herbert, our ex-Financial Director, and these days still Executive Board Member, as well as heads of our Memorial Park business. It's nice to sit in front of all of you for maybe not even consecutive. I think it's a fifth or sixth time with some good results, not only from a profitability perspective, but from a cash flow perspective, and reporting that the business is in a really good position. Even though if you take into account the economic conditions, let's call it political conditions, the interest rates, inflation pressure, lots of personal financial pressure the consumer is feeling, us as a business is doing good, and not only still from a financial position, but also from all the softer issues. I had a look earlier today. If you look at our environmental compliance, if you look at what we do for our own people, internal and external, anyone we work with, especially our contractors. Our contracts are very important for us as we don't do our own construction any longer. And I'll touch on the development business just now, but where the contractors are actually coming to us for more work now, and they have pipeline. But I think that's a relationship built, and it's a very important relationship, especially taking into account that we don't have our own construction capacity any longer. We must keep that relationship strong. And then last, but definitely not least, the communities we operate in. And I'm going to highlight a quick story, which sometimes it's more important for us as a management team to see how the business deal with it when it doesn't go according to plan than when it goes according to plan. We just had a situation last 6-9 months on Olive Tree, one of our complexes on our South Hills development, where it's really been difficult. To put it blunt, I think the devil was in that project at some stage. And anything that could have gone wrong have gone wrong, plus a bit. And then that complex was priced from roughly 900,000 rands, all 136 freestanding houses, from 900,000 to 1.3 million. Now, someone that pays that type of money for a house in an entry-level market, they're quite hard on the quality, and they generally, when one or two things go wrong, they blow it out of proportion, they become unreasonable. But the nice thing is we worked hard. In lots of cases, this doesn't cost money. The money part's almost a smaller part because we use contractors, even though there was actually one or two quality issues as well. The contractors fix it up, but how you build back that relationship. And we last week, beginning of last week, got a very complimentary email from the head of the trustees of that homeowners association. I said it's all freestanding houses, complimenting us on how we dealt with the situations, how we fielded the music, how we stayed humble, even though in some of those public meetings, we were criticized quite a lot, and a lot of things that wasn't our mistake. And how the team, and yes, we replaced the project manager, I think twice, just to make sure we've got the right individual on there, but how we turned that situation around. And that's very important in our view in terms of sustainability of the group. We need to be close to our clients. Our clients are literally, if we don't have clients, the days of working for government clients, for big clients are over. Every single client matters. And that's why I tell you a story, and sustainable actions So that's a very good thing that we also still focus on that. If I go through the businesses specific, the development business, first and foremost, it's difficult out there currently. I must compliment all the banks. All the banks are still supporting our product 100% of end user finance. That really is helpful. Yes, I think it's because I've reported in the past how we structure and how we increase the quality, the specifications, the lifestyle choice in these developments, where we're quite far under the market norm, and it's easy to test. There is secondary sales going through on these projects, and it's nice, sometimes interesting to see how much more people sell their houses 2-3 months after they took transfer, especially the investors, for how much more. And that's the equity locked up. But that's also the difference we make. If you go back to building legacies, changing lives, it's a lifestyle choice, and it's ready to uplift people. And that creates balance sheet, creates wealth for the individuals. But sales have been difficult. I can report, as at the interims, that we're still on the up. So we're still doing well, but we have to work a lot harder for ourselves. We have to put a lot more effort and creativity into them, but the team has performed. November, December has been really difficult, even for us, but January, February looks a lot better again. And maybe it's good that this presentation is now and it wasn't in November and December. Maybe my comments would have been somewhat more negative by then, but overall, a year basis, still looking very good. Maybe just touch on one or two of the more project-specific things. We are going into an election year. We are cautious of the build-up to the election, maybe not the election specific. We are spending a lot of time with a lot of economic advisors, political advisors, especially from the banks, also the economists, the actuaries, what they see. We've had a call with one of the guys yesterday. We saw one of the other banks last week and the week before, some more people. So we're spending a lot of time to try and analyze where we see the market go to. And it's not necessarily because we think it's going to dry up. There's still this big market. I'll stand to my point. If you go and stand on the corner of Honeydew, Diepsloot, Khayelitsha, and Cape Town, you look how much people leave for formal job opportunity early in the morning. There's definitely still a market out there. But how can the consumer afford it? Is very important to us, and that's why we do this work, and also to make sure that we don't put too much money on risk through all of the cycles. In the build up to the election, and I'll go through now numbers, what we've been servicing and building. The nice part is that we done a lot of sales last year. We built a lot of units, and due to some, let's call it, public sector inefficiencies, not all that units would have transferred at the end of February. We'll still have a good set of results. So it's maybe off the back of a good build-up. But the nice thing is that we're not under pressure to start a lot of construction currently in the build-up to the election. We are starting projects, but we're typically completing the internal infrastructure, and we'll build it up to foundations and maybe a few brick courses. But you don't want anything with a roof on that can be invaded through popular or populist marches in the build-up to the election. And then as soon as we're through the election cycle, things calm down, we'll continue. Sales will continue on all these projects. We're not slowing down on sales. And as I say, sales currently is very strong. So that's just a bit of background on that. If you look what we've done through the year, we've built a lot of units. And the very nice part is that most of those projects will be fully completed in the next week or two. So that's at stock that will typically transfer, or some of them are transferring now, and then March, April, May, June. So good visibility of what the next 6 months will look at like, and then of course the rest of the year as we continue to sell and construct. We also focus a lot on major infrastructure work. If you look at our Fleurhof project, we completed all Balkan Link infrastructure. So just for everyone's sake, Balkan Link is typically your main access roads, your water reservoir that's not necessarily on your site, and your big pipe up to there feeding your site of water. It's your sewer, your big sewer lines crossing the pipe, even on the other side of the pipe where you have to do some upgrades, whether it's processing plants and the like, and the same with stormwater. Same with intersections, same with electricity substations, mini subs. So for Fleurhof, I can report that Fleurhof now have 9,106 families residing that have actually taken occupation in the project. There's a further, the total project through this creative designing and maybe, adding 1 or 2 land parcels, today is sitting at the total yield of 16,778. So more than 7,000 units to go, but with almost no Balkan Link infrastructure cost, and the land's also been effectively paid for. So only internals that have to be installed. So from a liquidity perspective, from a cash turnaround perspective, we can act very quickly as the market pick up. And on the back of that, we're currently servicing the internals infrastructure on 956 walk-up unit opportunities, as well as 72 freestanding houses stands. So again, to have pipeline. Southfields, we've built 320, Fleurhof, we built 204 units plus completed the roughly 100 freestanding units and transferred a lot of stock we didn't transfer in the previous year. If you look at Southfields, we completed 320 new units. We completed 196 subsidized units at the beginning of the year, as well as roughly 136 freestanding houses. We've got 304 service stands. We're busy first servicing another, for sectional title walk-ups, we're busy first servicing another 136 where infrastructure will be completed in the next few weeks. And then that sale process will start all along as well. Then if you go to our 32 Pine and our Lavina Vale developments, our 32 Pine development, that's at one behind Cedar Square Mall in Fourways. I can report that we're 70% sold out on that development, even though it sells from north of 3.5 million rand. Most of those houses are under construction and going well. Bank draws, we're getting good support from the banks as well. So even that, we're trading out that old portfolio. Same goes for Lavina Vale. If we move to Cape Town, Bella is the one site that really, we almost don't have to market itself. The walk-in traffic is amazing on that site. There we have approximately 2,800 opportunities left, of which 954 we're busy doing internal infrastructure, and the rest is fully serviced. So all of that is serviced. So we'll just continue to tick over on that site on an ongoing basis. Bella is also the one site where we're actually going to start construction and carry on, just because of the big market demand. We then move to Scottsdene. Scottsdene in total, there's another 300 opportunities left. And on top of that, 634 at different phases of construction, which we are busy building out, selling. And Scottsdene, everyone remember, that's where that old big invasions was. Sales have really picked up in the last 6 months. So we're very thankful of that. At some stage, I must say, we've been very nervous, but luckily someone's looked after us. There's an upper hand and things have picked up nicely. If we look at the new developments, Frederick and Cape Town, very excited. After 4 years, we can report that we overcome all our heritage challenges, as well as our town planning challenges, and that project is ready to go to ground. The challenge we're sitting with is that we say, hang on, it's a market in Cape Town, we haven't. Do we really want to go to ground on our own there? So we're busy with a few partnership discussions, or even potentially selling the project. For all of you that don't know, that is Nazareth House in Frederick, in Frederick's sports fields. So exceptionally well located. On the backside, you've got a view of the mountain, and on the front, you're overlooking basically Cape Town over the waterfront into the sea. So a lot of momentum there. Yes, sales have been under pressure certain parts of the year, but all in all, we believe we'll have a good year. All in all, it's also look very good for the next financial year, which is important to us. And as I already said, we are cautious going into the elections. We cannot control it, and unfortunately, that have economic impact, plus the interest rate environment. But it's not only South Africa, it's also internationally. We then move on to Memorial Parks quickly. Memorial Parks, I think that business might surprise a lot of you to the upside during when we get to results time. Waldo and his team has done a lot of work to turn that business around. Our marketing efforts have paid off. We're busy with new marketing efforts. We're also quite excited that we have some expansion plans that hopefully will be announced soon on that business, into more provinces and the like. Expanding that business, driving the current traction we have. What's interesting there is that last year, if you go back to the results, 58% of our sales was actual burials. This year it's 40%, but we can say that and we said it at the interims as well, is that our market share in terms of the burial rate has increased. So we're quite excited about the growth that business is producing. The labor sales offering of the deferred sales are definitely playing a role at this stage. Our true bad debts in that business have picked up slightly from the year after half year. I think we reported roughly 5% at half year. Picked up slightly, but not anything to be concerned of. And remember there, we only account for the revenue once we receive the last money. Otherwise, we just give them their money back. So quite a simplistic thing, but that business has really shown good growth. The teams have started working well together. And what's very positive for me, if you take all the businesses combined, we came through a very difficult period in the build-up to 2019. We put a lot of work in to close a lot of things, turn the business around. As we sit here today, we actually decreased some permanent staff from last year. I think we're 156 now. We were 162 as the end of February last year. We focus the business. The teams are working better together. The teams has been around through the difficult times, so they know what to look out for. They know how to weather the storm. We're not immune to the storms. I'm going to use an example I used at the presentation end of last year for an investor presentation. And what I said is a development cycle is very much like a South African road. It is generally full of potholes. It's these days because of speeding, there's speed bumps. And some of those speed bumps are quite high and quite difficult to get over. And because we stay in Johannesburg, we cannot drive Toyota bakkies because it might not be up in the front when we get there later on. So we drive normal vehicles. And then you start a development and you start this road. You can see where you go to. We're passionate and dedicated to get there. But in the road, we have to drive through potholes. Sometimes we cut our tires through the potholes and we need to we need to fix the tires, or we need to swap out the tires. Then we have to slow down for the potholes, which is generally public sector process, whether it's plan approvals, whether it's fire approvals, whether it's occupation, whether it's availability of electricity. And touch wood at this stage, all our projects have electricity availability, and it's actually going very well, and the infrastructure has been installed, so there's no issues with that. But especially if you deal with Eskom, that's not a speed bump. That's one of these big potholes where you really have to stop, almost get out, go and see if you can drive through it, then slowly drive through it, hope you don't cut your time, then carry on. And then there's sometimes you complete a lot of units and the systems are off and you just cannot get your occupation certificates, which you have to issue. And those are those speed bumps we also have to stop and really drive up and drive on it and drive down. Otherwise, you hit your sump on your way down. And all of that is a development cycle. But the benefit in Calgary is, I believe, that the team has been around for a long time. And I'm not talking about us around the table. I'm talking about the technical teams, the teams on site. Our staff turnover is quite low. So those people have seen it. They don't get flustered anymore. They don't get upset. They realize the challenge. They make a plan and they get over it. And I think if you look at Calgary and the upside I want to give you at Calgary is, yes, there is uncertain times ahead. Yes, there is risk ahead. But we're really positive about the future. I said earlier that we've done a lot for the softer issues. As we sit here today, more than 83% of our top structure construction has been done by contractors, which are more than 50% black owned. But after full construction, not after 83, after 100% top structure construction, 36% have been done by 100% black owned subcontractor or contractors, not subcontractors, contractors. And the benefit we see in that is because most of the subbies that work under the main contractors are local. But the main contracts in our case is 36% 100% black owned. And the positive for us is that we're really making an impact on South Africa. We're really taking people from not great living conditions. We're putting them in lifestyle, building legacies changing life, in lifestyle choice homes, with sports fields, with good running water, with electricity, energy saving, proper security. But also we're creating jobs in the back end. We're uplifting communities, we're creating sustainable jobs and employment. So we're doing all those things. And I believe that Calgary, if you look at where Calgary stands today, have done a lot to uplift it, done a lot to support these communities. And if you're in the build up to the election, do we expect some riots? Do we expect some uncertainty or problems on site? We always plan for it. But we believe that we've done a lot in these communities, and that's actually the thing that will support us. Like with the, I can't remember which year, but with that big riots 2 years ago, all over where Jabulani Mall was burned down. We're building on 3 sides of the malls, and our units wasn't touched because the community stood up for our units. And that's what we hope will happen again. From a capital allocation perspective, there is basically a few things we consider. We always consider share buybacks. You would have seen that we now announced we brought the shares down from 121 million to 95 million, cost us 76 million rand, average price of roughly 3 rand. That's quite a big discount for its currently trading. But if you look at historic numbers, last we made 1.53 rand a share. It's basically the 2 times price earnings. The discussion on dividends is picking up speed. We want to continue to give back to shareholders. I think a lot of, especially the older shareholders, are stuck around for a very long period of time. But it's not an either or discussion. All these things have to be considered. It also has to be considered that we have continued driving the business. And again, sometimes someone once said to me, but your shares are so cheap, shut down the business, use all the money to buy back shares. The problem is then you lose your team. So whether you like it or not, you lose sustainability, and it takes a very long time to build it up again. You actually destroy value. And that's why we continuously focus on infrastructure and always like to be in a position to keep driving the business as well on a risk balance approach. Same with Memorial Parks expansions. Memorial Parks' real benefit is not in the profitability. It's in a true free cash flow that business is generating. And if you look at what we spent on share buybacks this year, I think it's illustrative of what our true free cash flow is and how confident we are on future cash flows. So all of that things gets considered on an ongoing basis every time there's spare capital. In closing, I believe the market is there in both our businesses. I believe that we have the ammunition to go into a little bit of a war, go into a little bit of a storm throughout the uncertain economic and political conditions. But we are positive that the market is there. We've got the support of the banks, and we hope that we can continue delivering good, solid results, not only from a financial perspective, but on all fronts. I'll open the floor to questions. I saw it coming through already.
We've got a couple of questions. I'll start at the top. First one is, what are you particularly worried about in the build-up to the elections? What are the banks, political and economic analysts telling you?
Yeah, so build-up is right. So I'll stay clear of political party names. The concern is that you get the senseless where political parties don't have the support they think they have, and they want to ride more support. And the easiest going to give them free houses, free land, burn down things. South Africa and France, and France is very similar if you look at political conditions. We're just 2 countries in the world that have this brilliant ability. If we don't have enough schools, we burn down the schools we have. If we believe we don't have enough public transport, we vandalize the public transport we have. Which concept in my head doesn't make sense, but that's how we work. And that's our fear. So our fear is that they try and close the sites. And although I already said how much local support we have, they try and close the sites to get support and ride the people behind them. And if you have a site that's in full production, standing time is expensive. And even though we've got fixed cost contracts with our contractors, there's still clauses and they can still call force majeure in those instances. So we're very sensitive to that. We do price some of it in. We have big, if you look at our financial statements, we've got big accruals and provisions for those type of events. It's not that it will necessarily hit the income statement, but it does cause delay and big frustration. And it's unnecessary. We believe that because the elections begin of the year and because we can plan it around it, we don't have to take any risk in the build up to that. And that's pre-election.
Next question is, do you have any specifics relating to the number of bond applications and the percentages granted currently compared to last year and compared to historical long-term trends?
Yes, I have, but I believe that's sensitive. So I'll be happy to answer that question. We might even bring it into the integrated report. But I think at this stage it will end up in forecasting. So
Right, then the next one I think is for me. Can you please provide more details with regards to the Memorial Parks mechanics? The client buys the grave, how does the maintenance get funded going forward? So essentially, in very simplistic terms, the customer comes and buys the grave. It's a once-off purchase. So there's a once-off cash flow that comes into our bank account. We then take a portion of that cash and we capitalize it separately to a maintenance fund, which sits on our balance sheet. That fund then essentially works like an insurance free float where the returns on that fund will one day be utilized to firstly recapitalize the fund to make sure it survives into perpetuity. And then secondly, the excess returns needs to be sufficient to make sure that it can maintain the parks to its current standards, essentially into perpetuity. So your purchase price always gets split in these two components. That's also why there's a big difference between what you see from an accounting revenue perspective and what you see from a cash flow perspective between that those two elements in your business.
Yeah, if you go to the trade and other payables note, you'll see the liability, and the asset is sitting split. So some of the cash we are using in the business, and what you'll also see on the face of the balance sheet, actually there's other financial assets. That's the one asset side to that.
The next question is, what is the potential value of the Vredehuk project compared to the current carrying value on balance sheet?
Yeah, tricky question. It's more, the question is, what is it for if I sell it, and what else we can do? So that's that big capital allocation question I spoke about earlier. It's worth more even if I sell it today, because we haven't capitalized. There we used external consultants at Arcade, we haven't capitalized the internal team. So it's most probably 30-40% more than what the total cost to date on a quick sale basis, a simplistic basis. It's worth a few times that in development value over time. The question is where the share price currently is. The question is if Frankenwald coming. The question is, can't we better utilize the cash and turn it quicker in a market we better understand than a high-end market in the heart of Cape Town City Bowl, where we have never played? So I'll hopefully be able to better answer that closer to the results. But it's now that the rights are there, it's something we're grappling and will sort out.
The next question is, please can you give an update on Frankenwald?
Yeah. Frankenwald, all environmentalists have been approved, all studies have been approved, all town planning has been approved. We are awaiting conditions of establishment, and then all rights. And where Frankenwald always sits different from our other projects, we clear off. In the beginning years, we done the town planning on a phased approach. Frankenwald, we done it all as one. So at the end of this, we'll have the full right for 50,000 units. Now, whether we build 30,000 units or 25 is open for discussion. But I believe by now everyone knows it. We'll always try and maximize it. But yeah, at this stage, everything is in place, and you'll most probably see an announcement on the exercise of the option soon. On the 14th of February this week, when was it, Tuesday, Wednesday, I got a Valentine's note from Taffy Adler, which heads up Wits Properties, congratulating us that this transaction has been coming for 5 years. So I didn't actually pick it up. We signed it on Valentine's Day 5 years ago. I think one night at 9, so one of those. But yeah, it's getting there.
Cool. Can you comment on the mix of sales and the average selling price? Are you still weighted towards the high-end houses as reported in the first half? So the higher part of the
yeah. So higher part of low end, yes. As we sit here, still the same as at the entrance, we've got no government houses under construction. What I can say is there is interest from government. We just don't necessarily want to start it again before the elections, because there's always uncertainty in terms of, well, we have to get through next year's week's budget, because there's a big question mark on of availability of funding, and then we'll build up. So there is interest, but as we sit here today, everything is in line with the interims, even slightly higher. We sold a bit more freestanding houses, but everything is open market.
And thank you for your response about what you're worried about in the build-up to the elections. Have you had any credible warnings about potential disruptions ahead of the elections? And is it possible to say who could possibly encourage this writing?
Okay, so every now and then there's noise. And when there's noise, we try and manage it beforehand. So through our security companies, we've got intelligence in the local communities and the like. So that's how we operate it. So you effectively pay for intelligence through your security contracts. So there's been a bit of here and there. There's been once this year where they tried to close the site. They've been successful for 2 hours, and then we got it resolved. So there's been no major stoppages. There's currently nothing, but we have our eyes and ears on the ground, and we've got riot squads on standby, so we are paying fees for that. But we factor it in. That goes for every election. We make sure we're ready when it happens, and we really hope it doesn't happen. But we've seen we've learned in 2017, 18 through that big invasions. It's much easier to act up front and pay the fees up front and make sure when it happens you keep them off your site. And if they manage to get in, you immediately get them out within 5 hours, than to try and get them out afterwards. So there's nothing tangible as we sit here. On the comment of who I prefer not to comment. I don't think it's Calgo's role to play in politics or to comment on politics.
The next one is relating to dividends. It says, do you foresee that the Memorial Parks business will have surplus funds at some point which can be used for dividends after Calgary costs have been provided for?
Yeah, so we don't look at Memorial Parks separate from the group. The target of Memorial Parks is to have sufficient free cash flow to carry all group overheads on an annual basis. That's the first target. And then secondly, interest. And as everyone knows, we brought our debt down over the years. Now the interest rates are quite high, but yes, so that's the second target. In all of that cash flows and all the free cash flow generation, not only from Memorial Parks, but from the group perspective, we believe that we're getting closer to it. The question is where the share price is it not better to still buy back more shares? One, two, in the build up to the election, should we not sit on more capital if any of these invasions happen, if anything happens, that we can have more than sufficient risk capital? So yeah, all those things get considered, but dividends are definitely increasing in priority.
And what has construction inflation been over the year?
6.1%. Infrastructure escalation has been slightly more. It's been about 8.5. There is numbers that suggest 12.3, but that's not what we've been seeing. But our top structure escalation is just over 4%. So on a balanced approach, 6.1. We are managing it quite tightly. We also have monthly meetings, even though we enter into fixed cost contracts for contractors. They price it in, but you have monthly meetings to get the data, because that indicates what we're going to sign the new contracts on. Because we have a bit of time, we actually went on a bit of a broader tender basis this year. So 2 of the projects we went quite wide to just see if there's interest from new blood, and what the market interest is, and what not negotiated tenders is, but open tender pricing. So again, in the next 2-3 weeks, I'll be able to give you better data. The tenders are closing, I think, on the 25th of February. But we are controlling it. We're not nervous. I think remember, it's only on a portion, the land price and everything in the infrastructure is fixed. But it's something we keep a watching eye on, especially if you're forecasting interest rates should start coming down. But what if they're delayed? Then there'll be some more reluctance on the pricing we can pass on to the clients and the like.
There's currently no other questions. I have allowed everybody to unmute yourself and ask a question. So if it's easier to do that, you are welcome to do that as well. It's now the written questions today, or you're welcome to pop any other questions into that chat box.
Nothing. That's a quick round.
Rob, you want to go for it?
Yes, I just wanted to just quickly touch on the Fred Hook question, the project compared to Current Valley, and you talked 40% and possibly more. In my mind, surely buying back your NAV at half price seems like a slam dunk compared to developing over time and compared to dividend policies. I'm just interested to see what sort of debates happening regarding dividend policy versus buybacks, because to me, the buyback is much more obvious option.
It's an interesting question from a debt provider. Yes, Rob. So I think I hinted towards when I answered the Frederick question, and I immediately went to capital allocation. It's something we're considering. Just also in the current market, anything you sell, everyone wants to negotiate a deferred type of deal because the banks don't fund land and the like. So if I sell it now and only see the money in 3 years, then I might rather do some bit more work and sell it later on. Cash deal in the current market, you 100% right in your assumptions. We'll definitely consider that very strongly. There is one or two potential, but yeah, in the current market as well, cash is king. And we've just went through 2 deals that never came to the cash point. So.
Anyone else, you're welcome to just put up your hand and
Go from my notes and see if I missed anything.
do you consider the illiquidity factor of the shares when you do the buybacks? The shares illiquid and will get more illiquid as the shares get bought back.
So I believe it's our role as management to drive long-term sustainable returns to shareholders. We are not in charge of the share price. We're also not here to prop up the price, if I can call it that. So do we consider illiquidity? Yes. But I believe the illiquidity also gives us opportunity at the back end to buy it fairly cheaply, because the bigger lines of shares that wants to exit doesn't have, and then they dump it in the market and we sweep it. And you would have seen that we've consistently been sweeping since last year, March, up to into January, even January this year, at certain pricing. And it's through programs and independent brokers that does all of that. So yes, it might make it more illiquid, but that will have to be then a separate discussion at a separate point in time. How do we then deal with the company? But at this stage, the less shares in issue, the better return for current shareholders on a return per share basis. And therefore, hopefully the market see what we are doing and they start acknowledging it. And if they don't, then it opens a whole host of alternative options, which we'll have to at that stage discuss with the larger shareholders, but we're not there as such.
Well, then there's a hand from Nick. Nick, you're welcome to unmute yourself and pose a question.
Nick?
Nick, sorry, we can't hear you.
Can you unmute him?
He's on mute. Sorry, Nick.
You might have to type, we can't hear you, even though you're
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Anyone else?
Close it off.
Yeah, anyone else?
Yes, Junior Smith.
Thinkers?
Junior Smith just posted a
Junior.
question.
Junior's question, hold on, sorry. Would there ever be an option to do share buybacks and dividends at the same time?
I don't think share buybacks and dividends are mutually exclusive. So potentially, yes. What you just don't want to do is exit a lot of cash so that you don't at that stage have money for share buybacks if the opportunity arrives. But it's definitely not a mutual exclusive. So depending on the absolute free cash flow value, taking into account, as I say, we're slightly more cautious at this stage in the build-up. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when the interest rates going to start coming down. Something interesting, for instance, I'm monitoring is the timeless payment of school fees of government schools. Because if you don't pay your school fees, even government schools, they're quite hard on the parents. And that's been slipping. Now, the fact that that's been slipping tell me that, hang on, the consumers are under more financial pressure than they're keen to acknowledge. And therefore, we're just slightly more cautious of our capital at this specific point in time. But that might in the next, we start seeing interest rates coming down. I think you asked earlier on the banks, all 5, so the normal 4 Absa, Nedbank, FNB, Standard Bank, and then fifth one, Investec, all 5 of those banks are confident that we'll see between 75 and 100 basis points decrease during the course of the year. There's differences in when they believe it will start decreasing. But as I say, we're monitoring that. And as soon as you start seeing that, now just bear in mind that there's a lot of research, you can Google it, that internationally you see car sales, especially in South Africa, immediately picks up, and the housing sales are generally about 9 months delayed. Now, I think what people first go, they over-indebt themselves in these difficult times. Then they haven't bought a car for 3 years, so they want to feel good, so they buy a car, which even more over-indebt themselves, but it's not for me to comment on. And then they trade out of the short-term debt, and then they buy the house and the like. So we're also just monitoring that, but as soon as that turns, the one benefit this time around, said all previous deep cycles, the banks have stopped giving 100% home loans in our market. None of the 4 major banks have stopped during this cycle. So it's my view that we'll see a quicker turn, but in-house we're doing a lot of research on that to see how we can get that data.
You've got a tricky question coming up, which I'm going to try and combine. It's Nick's one, just in the parts. How likely are violent disruptions at our development sites in the lead up to the elections, and what's the probability do you think that is?
If it's normal political party driven, it's generally not violent. The moment you have associations like the taxi association involved, and or people, that's peer criminals, jumping on the bandwagon on the back of that and trying to make a quick money. So the previous, careful what I say now, but the previous invasions in Scottsdale, for instance, and actually in Fleur, was not driven by construction mafia or land without compensation. It was driven with footage we have of individuals selling those homes for between 10 and 15,000 rand cash, taking money off people. Now, if I paid and I thought I got a property and now I don't have it. Now, firstly, they get violent to try and keep us out for longer because they do more sales. And secondly, if I paid and I thought I have my property, now I realize I don't have my property, then I'm not, that's the poorest of the poor that go through that channels, then I'm very upset. And then you get the odd, not the norm, but the odd person that starts shooting and the like. But we do have measures in place to manage that if it occurs. So, but generally, political party uproar is not violent.
What was the latest released NAV per share of Calgro?
I've absolutely no idea. I think it's roughly 11.80 rand, if memory serves me well.
Yeah, we'll check it down.
It's 1.1 billion. Yeah, 11.98 rand.
Then, okay. Yes.
Someone came through.
Let's put up your hand and then we can give you the mic.
Yeah. Seems in absence of more questions. Thanks for all your time. Thanks for your interest in the company as always. As I started, I really hope that we can continue delivering good, sustainable results, not once-off results. I think that's what's always been our goal. And if you have more questions afterwards, please just go either through info@Calgro, or the easiest, normally you'll see that Vanessa and Inge's email address are generally as our investor relations on there. Email them and they'll follow up with us, and then we'll try and come back to you as quickly as possible. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everyone.